My wife said she cheated on me. I told her I'd killed someone. On our wedding night, my wife wanted to play a little game, an exchange of secrets, she'd said, our deepest ones. Sophia, half joking, went first. I slept with your best man this afternoon. He was good. I came on to him. When it was my turn, I let the silence hang in the air for a moment. I killed someone. Would you believe me? Sophia burst out laughing, a sharp, glittering sound. Oh, honey, are you mad about what I just said? I was just teasing. I love watching you get jealous over me. Sophia Vancroft was an heiress, a master of the social game who had seen and done it all. The fact that she'd agreed to marry a man from my background was enough to make headlines. One last wild moment before settling down seemed to fit her profile. She nudged me, her eyes bright with anticipation. Come on, it's your turn. You have to tell me a secret. I looked at her, my heart beating a slow, steady rhythm. Did she really want this? I caressed her perfectly sculpted cheek, a gesture of feigned reluctance. All right, I said, but don't regret hearing it. Of course not, she said, her confidence absolute. The wine was working its magic, pulling memories from the deepest corners of my soul. I stared at my new wife, the woman I was about to destroy. I killed someone. On a night just like this 15 years ago. I paused, letting it sink in. The victim was my own mother. Before she got hooked, my mom was an incredible seamstress. I began, watching Sophia's eyes as I wove the story I'd prepared just for her. She had these gifted hands. She could take the most ordinary piece of fabric and turn it into a dress that would make all the neighborhood kids burn with envy. Life was poor back then, but it was stable, until she met them, her so-called friends. They dripped with money and smelled of decay. These wealthy socialites showed her a glimpse of the high life, and they gave her a taste of something she should have never tried. I let my gaze hold hers. You guessed it, opioids. At first, it was just for fun, but with addiction, the first time is just a prelude to 1,000 more. The sewing machine in our living room gathered dust. Our small apartment began to reek of a sickening mix of cheap perfume and the bitter, metallic scent of burnt pills. She got addicted fast. She'd do anything for money. She sold off everything we owned, piece by piece. And when there was nothing left, she started looking at me. At this, Sophia let out a disdainful little sniff. That's what junkies do. They're a lost cause. Her reaction was exactly what I'd expected. Cold, detached, superior. Just like she'd always been. Yeah, I continued. My mom thought money could solve everything. She lost her job, started running with that crowd full-time, and soon, our apartment was empty. She started hitting me, screaming at me, trying to force me to go find my father for money. My dad, a coward to his core, had taken off long ago, unable to deal with her. My life had spiraled into a swamp of misery. I thought I'd hit rock bottom, but I had overestimated her humanity and underestimated the power of the drugs. On my birthday, she didn't hit me. She didn't even scream. For the first time in forever, she smiled at me. She said she was taking me out to celebrate, to a nice place, for a good meal, and I actually believed her. At that age, I still clung to one last, desperate fantasy of the mother I once had. She took me downtown to a gleaming tower in the heart of Midtown Manhattan. The place was an exclusive, high-end private spa. Hearing this, Sophia, who had been lifting her wine glass, paused. Her eyebrow arched. A junkie who hangs out at a luxury spa? Her tone carried its usual note of derision, as if I were telling a cheap joke. That was the tone. I fought back the wave of hatred rising in my chest and kept my voice pitched to that of a pitiful victim. Her friend took her there, I said. She told me it was paradise. I pressed on, my voice unnervingly calm for someone recounting a trip to hell. The place was quiet, you're right about that. The air was thick with a mix of expensive essential oils and incense. It made you sleepy just breathing it in. Just like the perfume you wear, Sophia. She led me to a lounge area, and a waiter brought over drinks almost immediately. She ordered me a freshly squeezed orange juice. Said it was my birthday present. She even patted my head. Happy birthday, Liam, she said. It was the last time I ever heard her call me by my name with any affection. I drank it. The juice was sweet, sickeningly so. I hadn't tasted anything sweet in so long. I gulped it down greedily. Soon, the room started to spin. My eyelids felt like they were weighted down with lead. My last memory is of her, helping me up, a strange, unreadable smile on her face. She led me to a room at the end of a long hallway. Sophia gave a slight yawn, a flicker of impatience in her eyes. And then what? You just fell asleep there? I did fall asleep, I said, pausing just long enough for the red wine to slosh gently in her glass. When I woke up, it was because someone was shaking me awake. I was on a soft massage table, covered by a thin blanket. The main lights were off, leaving the room in the hazy glow of a few dim wall sconces. My whole body ached, a deep, chilling pain that seemed to settle in my bones. There were several women in the room, strangers. Their shadows danced on the walls, long and grotesque, like phantoms. They were laughing, chattering in a mix of English and some other language I didn't recognize. The combined scent of their expensive perfumes was so strong it made me gag. Then I saw her, my mother. She was standing in the shadows nearby, looking small and servile. A woman in a silk robe grabbed my chin, her face so close I could smell the alcohol on her breath. "He's a pretty one, isn't he? Skin smoother than a girl's." Another voice giggled. "Definitely worth the price." I lay frozen on the table, my mind a complete blank. Then, the woman in the robe pulled a thick wad of cash from her purse and threw it at my mother's face. The $100 bills scattered across the floor. My mother didn't flinch. She didn't even get angry. She just dropped to her knees immediately, a fawning smile plastered on her face, and started snatching up the bills. She counted them carefully under the dim light, her focus absolute, almost pious. It was the same focus she used to have at her sewing machine, working on a new dress under the glow of a small lamp. In that moment, something inside me shattered. "Your mother. She drugged you." Sophia's voice was tight. The story had finally gotten under her skin. "Is that so surprising?" I asked her. When a person is completely consumed by their desires, humanity is the first thing to go. What's a title like mother compared to that? I was terrified. I just wanted to get out of there. My mother chased after me as I ran out, her voice a sharp whisper. "Son, you don't say a word about what happened tonight. You hear me? You have to trust me. We're going to turn things around. You'll go to the best schools, study abroad." But I wasn't an idiot. I knew exactly what had happened. The bruises blooming on my skin, the tearing pain inside me. They were undeniable proof. I had been sold like a piece of meat. My world had collapsed. I locked myself in my room. I didn't eat, didn't drink, didn't see anyone. I thought about dying, but I couldn't do it. I couldn't stand the thought of letting her destroy me completely. As I said this, I let my eyes well up, my voice soften. She used to love me so much. The clothes I wore when I was little. She made every single one by hand. The neighborhood kids all had toys, but I didn't. So she took scraps of fabric and sewed me a little stuffed tiger. I remember it so clearly. The tiger's eyes were two black buttons, shiny and bright. I slept with it for years. I couldn't connect the woman counting dirty money on the floor with the mother who had sewn me a tiger. Were they even the same person? I didn't know. All I knew was that the little boy who used to sleep with that tiger died that day. What happened next? Sophia's voice held a tremor she couldn't conceal. She wanted me to stop, but she couldn't resist knowing the end. Human curiosity, the deadliest poison of all. I drained my glass of red wine. The cool liquid slid down my throat, but couldn't extinguish the hatred that had been simmering inside me for 15 years. Later, I ran out of that spa. I didn't have shoes. I just ran, my bare feet slapping against the cold asphalt of the empty streets. There was only one thought in my head. Home. That broken, dark, disgusting place was the only sanctuary I could think of. I got back and locked myself in my room, shoving my dresser against the door. But it was no use. She came back just before dawn. She didn't have a key, so she kicked the door, pounded it with her fists, and screamed the most vile curses. "You little bastard. Get the hell out here. You ruined everything. Do you have any idea who those people are? The money you cost me tonight. I could break both your legs, and it wouldn't be enough to pay it back." The door shuddered under her assault. I huddled in the corner, shaking uncontrollably. Just as the lock was about to give way, another voice shouted. It was my dad, the man who had been a coward his whole life. I don't know how, but he had come back. "Have you lost your mind?" It was the first time I had ever heard him yell at her. "Get out of my way. This is none of your business. If you weren't such a useless failure, would I have to do things like this?" My mother's rage found a new target. I heard scuffling, the sound of things breaking. My dad was yelling. My mother was screaming. I scrambled to move the dresser and yanked the door open. The living room was destroyed. My mother, her hair a mess and her eyes shot with blood, had my father pinned to the floor. She was strangling him, her eyes bulging with a terrifying madness. My father's face was turning purple as he clawed weakly at her hands. "You're insane. He's just a kid," he choked out. "My son." Hearing those words, my mother let out a hysterical laugh. She turned her head, her cloudy, crazed eyes locking onto me. "That's right. All for my wonderful son. He's worth a lot of money. Now you get over here. You're coming with me, right now. If you don't, I'll kill your useless father today." She tightened her grip. Time seemed to slow down. My father's eyes closed in despair. My mother's face was a mask of pre-withdrawal mania. In that instant, my body moved before my brain could think. I ran forward and grabbed the brass bull statuette from the entryway table. Using every ounce of strength I had, I swung it from behind and brought it down hard on the back of her head. Thud! A sickening muffled sound, heavier than a watermelon hitting concrete. The entire world went silent. My mother turned her head slowly, her movements unnervingly calm, and looked at me. There was no hate in her eyes, no love, just a vast, empty void. She reached out a hand, as if to grab something, and then collapsed in a heap. My dad was frozen on the floor, paralyzed with fear. I used the opportunity, gathered all my strength, and struck her again. She didn't move after that. Blood pooled from the back of her head, spreading into a dark crimson stain on the floorboards. I looked down at the brass bowl in my hands. It was slick with something warm and sticky. Drop, drop. It dripped onto the floor. I killed my mom. I didn't say anything more. I just watched Sophia. All the color had drained from her face. Her lips trembled, unable to form a word. Those eyes, usually so full of playful arrogance, were now filled with pure, undiluted horror. The wine glass finally slipped from her grasp. Thump! It landed on the thick rug without breaking. The crimson wine splashed out, a stark and vivid pool of blood. Sophia shot up from the sofa, stumbling backward. She stared at me in terror, as if I were the blood-soaked weapon itself. You! She wanted to scream, to run, but her legs refused to obey. Yes, this is what I wanted. This secret was 1,000 times more terrifying than her tawdry little affair. I continued my story. My dad wanted to protect me. Was that so wrong? I didn't want to be sold by my mother again. Was that so wrong? But if we called the cops, I'd be the one found guilty. My life, my future, it would all be over. We were terrified, huddled in a corner, with no idea what to do. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. It was Mr. Henderson from next door, a one-eyed watchmaker. He pushed the door open, his single, cloudy eye scanning the room before landing on me. His face was completely blank. My blood ran cold. Was he going to call the police? Blackmail us? His eyes stared at me, unblinking. I can help you, he said, if you're willing to trust me. I stopped there and turned the question on Sophia. If it were you, what would you do? She thought for a moment, her voice raspy. I'd say yes, I guess. At that point, what other choice is there? Then she added, but really, an old watchmaker? Could he actually do anything? I looked at her, a faint, unreadable smile playing on my lips. Actually, there wasn't just one choice. My face was half hidden in shadow, my voice low. There were two of us. Mr. Henderson was just a one-eyed old man with no family. So, we had another option. We could kill him and silence him for good. The color vanished from Sophia's face completely. I took her hand. It was cold and damp. The thought did cross my mind. For a second, I felt like I had become my mother, a desperate gambler backed into a corner. When it's a matter of survival, anyone can become a monster. But in the end, I chose to trust him. Mr. Henderson told us to drag the body to his backyard. We did. He asked my dad what his plan was. My dad was still in shock. Throw it away? In the river. Mr. Henderson let out a cold laugh. Don't be an idiot. How would you transport it? You got a car? What would you put in? A bag? A trunk? Someone would see you leaving at this hour. Besides, the medical examiner can pinpoint the time of death from body temperature. The cops would trace it back to you in a day. You wouldn't stand a chance. My dad just shook his head, defeated, just when we were at a total loss. Mr. Henderson spoke again, his voice chillingly calm. It's not that complicated. If the body disappears, then there's nothing for them to examine. He pointed to a massive soup pot in his backyard, one that was always simmering with something. To make someone disappear completely, you have to turn them into something no one can ever recognize. My dad and I were speechless with horror. Mr. Henderson's one eye stared at us coldly. You don't get it? Then it's time you learned. From that day on, Mr. Henderson stopped fixing watches. He started a new business selling meat broth. My dad's job was to go to the wholesale markets and buy the cheapest frozen scraps he could find. Pig heads, beef bones, chicken carcasses, anything and everything. Mr. Henderson would stand by, directing him coldly. Scrape the hair off completely, or the customers will notice. Soak the meat in water multiple times to get rid of the blood, or the smell will be too strong. Use a heavy hand with the spices. That's how you cover up any flavors that shouldn't be there. My dad wrung his hands, his voice trembling. What if someone can tell? Mr. Henderson shot him a look of pure contempt. Who doesn't use frozen meat for stew? As long as the spices are strong enough, the flavor bold enough, no one will ever taste the difference. For days, my dad couldn't leave the side of that pot. the one simmering with our family's darkest secret. When he finally lifted the lid, a powerful, rich, meaty aroma filled the entire backyard. My dad took a deep breath, and his face turned even paler. It smells so good. Mr. Henderson started selling his broth. It was rich, flavorful, and cheap, and his business took off. The neighbors all praised his cooking. No one knew what the base of that broth really was. My dad finally broke. A few weeks later, he abandoned me and ran away, vanished without a trace. I asked Mr. Henderson later. I continued, my voice low. Why? Why did you help me? He was quiet for a long time, then pointed to a black and white photo on his wall. It was of a pretty young girl. That was my daughter, he said. She was destroyed by a junkie too. Not long after, that man mysteriously disappeared. I understood instantly. Maybe that man hadn't run away. Maybe he ended up in this very pot. How nice, I thought to myself as I helped Mr. Henderson scrub the greasy cauldron. Now, my mother won't be so lonely. After that, I left for college, got a job, and then I met you. You know the rest of my life. That's my secret. I finished my story. The tale was over. In the opulent master suite, Sophia just stared at me, her eyes wide with terror. The romantic, newlywed atmosphere had evaporated completely. She flinched when I moved to touch her. Just then, there was a knock at the door. Knock, knock. The butler's voice came from the hallway. Mrs. Vancroft, Mr. Miller. A guest has arrived from Mr. Miller's hometown. He says he's brought a wedding gift. I glanced at Sophia and got up to open the door. She scrambled to her feet as if jolted by electricity. The door swung open. An old man stood in the hallway. He was wearing a shabby, out-of-style corduroy jacket and a black eye patch. His one remaining eye was cloudy and cold. He stretched his lips into a grin, revealing a row of yellowed teeth. His voice was a dry rasp. Liam, it's me, Mr. Henderson. One look. That was all it took. Sophia froze solid. Crash. This time, the wine glass in her hand hit the marble floor and shattered. I leaned against the doorframe and gave him a gentle smile. Mr. Henderson, you didn't have to come all this way so late. Nonsense, nonsense, the one-eyed man rasped, his voice like sandpaper. It's your wedding day. I wish you both a lifetime of happiness. He pressed a small, red cloth-wrapped box into my hand. His cloudy eye darted past me, into the room, lingered for a fraction of a second on Sophia's ashen face, and then looked away. I didn't invite him in. Take care on your way out. I closed the door and placed the small box on the console table, right next to the brass bull statuette, the murder weapon for my story. The room was deathly quiet. Sophia was still frozen in place, a statue carved from fear. The shattered glass and red wine pooled at her feet. She stared at me, forgetting to breathe. Seeing her like this, so utterly terrified, I couldn't hold it in any longer. I started to laugh. At first, it was just a low rumble in my chest, but it quickly grew into a loud, uncontrollable roar. Ha, 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 ha. The sound echoed in the cavernous room, sharp and unnerving. Sophia's horror slowly morphed into confusion, and then into pure, unadulterated rage. What were you laughing at? Her voice was still shaky, but now it was laced with accusation. I finally stopped, wiping a tear from the corner of my eye. Honey, you were genuinely terrified. I started walking toward her. She instinctively took a step back, her eyes narrowed with suspicion. I stopped, giving her space. I simply took out my phone, unlocked it, and calmly placed a video call. After a few rings, it connected. The screen lit up with the faces of a perfectly ordinary middle-aged couple. They were in a clean, modest living room, the evening news playing on a TV in the background. The woman wore an apron. The man had reading glasses perched on his nose. They beamed when they saw me. Son, Liam. I turned the screen towards Sophia. Mom, Dad, say hi to Sophia. The couple on the screen broke into even wider smiles. Oh my goodness, so that's Sophia? You're even more beautiful than in the pictures. Liam, you're finally married. You be good to her now, you hear? Sophia stared, transfixed at the screen, at the face of my mother, kind, warm, with no trace of the monstrous figure from my story. She was alive, right there, telling me to be a good husband. Sophia's mind clearly couldn't process it. She couldn't understand. I smiled at the phone. I know, Mom and Dad. You two get some rest. We're about to turn in ourselves. Okay, you two have a good night. I ended the call. The room was silent again. Sophia looked at me, her mouth opening and closing a few times before she finally found her voice. What? What was that? What was what? I walked over, bent down, and picked up the wine glass that hadn't broken. I refilled it and handed it to her. Mr. Henderson is an old neighbor. He lost his eye in a factory accident years ago. And after that story I told you, I pressed the cool glass in her cold hand and leaned in close, my lips next to her ear. I whispered, my voice for her alone. You're the one who broke the rules first, darling. You humiliated me on our wedding night. Don't I get to scare you a little? Boom. Something inside Sophia's head exploded. The fear vanished, replaced by a tidal wave of humiliation and rage. Liam Miller, she shrieked, and threw the glass of wine right in my face. I didn't move. The cold liquid ran down my hair and cheeks. A few drops stung my eyes. I must have looked pathetic, but I was still smiling. You're insane. You're a psychopath. Sophia was shaking with fury, jabbing a finger at me. What do you take me for? You think you can scare me with some cheap, twisted little story? Do you have any idea who I am? She was back. The Vancroft heiress. Arrogant, cruel, untouchable. Of course I know who you are, I said, wiping the wine from my face, my tone still mild. You're my wife, and I hope you remember that I'm your husband. I don't like it when other people touch my things, whether they're people or anything else. My words stopped her rage cold. She heard the warning in my voice, but a lifetime of privilege made it impossible for her to accept being on the back foot. It was a joke, Liam. Are you really this fragile? She sneered, trying to regain control. Don't push your luck. Marrying you was the charity case of the century. Don't think telling one ghost story makes you a big man. Is that so? My two soft words were like a spark in a barrel of gasoline. Sophia's anger flared. She tilted her chin up, assuming her full heiress posture. Liam, I'm warning you one last time. Don't test me. This marriage is a transaction. You do well to remember your place. I can forget about what happened tonight, but if there's a next time. Her words trailed off. She stopped, her brow furrowing. She subconsciously pressed a hand to her chest. What was that? Her heart was hammering. I must be more furious than I thought. Are you all right? I asked with concern, taking a step closer. Get away from me, she snapped, but her voice held a note of weakness she didn't recognize. Don't touch me. She tried to step back, but her legs suddenly gave out. Her body went limp, and she stumbled, collapsing toward the sofa. I rushed forward and caught her before she fell completely. Her skin was hot, but she was trembling. It was just a joke. No need to get this worked up, I said, half guiding, half carrying her onto the couch. My tone was gentle, the picture of a devoted husband. Sophia's face was a terrible color, not the flush of anger, but a sickly pallor. She was gasping for air, her chest heaving. I feel a little. She tried to speak, but found her tongue was going numb. She couldn't form a complete sentence. A sudden, sharp palpitation seized her, like an icy hand squeezing her heart. Her vision tunneled. This isn't anger. Panic began to supplant her rage. She tried to push me away, but found her arms were heavy and useless. A profound weakness was spreading from her chest through her entire body. She looked at me in horror. I was still sitting beside her, a gentle smile on my face. I just watched her, watched the fire in her eyes flicker and die. Watched her supreme arrogance crumble into confusion, and then into pure, unadulterated fear. I forgot to tell you something, I murmured, leaning close to her ear again, my voice a soft, intimate whisper. That spawned my story. The one my mother took me to. Its name was the Serenity Spa. The Serenity Spa. The three words struck her like a bolt of lightning, cutting through the chaos in her mind. It was a Vancroft family property. Her most private, most exclusive, most profitable asset. The place she used to control the powerful. Her own personal hell. The last thread of her sanity snapped. She tried to scream, but only a choked, gurgling sound came out. She tried to struggle, but her body was bound by invisible ropes. The paralysis was spreading from her limbs to her face. All she could do was stare at me. Stare at this man she had never once taken seriously. Stare at him as he delivered the cruelest words with the most tender expression. Human attention is a funny thing, I said, gently brushing a damp strand of hair from her forehead. When your emotions are completely captivated by a terrifying story, when your mind is reeling between fear, relief, humiliation, and rage. You don't notice things. You don't notice the toxins that have been throwing a party in your bloodstream. Sophia's pupils constricted to pinpricks. Poison? How? When? She frantically darted her eyes around the room, her mind racing through the last few hours. The wine? No, he drank it too. The gift from Mr. Henderson, but he never even opened it. She couldn't figure it out, and she was running out of time. Breathing was becoming a desperate, painful struggle. Her lungs felt like punctured balloons. Don't waste your energy, I said, as if reading her mind. It wasn't the wine, or the gift. It was much, much earlier. My voice was soft, colored with the perfect shade of pity. Remember this afternoon? The masseuse who did your pre-wedding spa treatment? Wasn't her technique incredible? It made you feel so relaxed, so at ease. Sophia's body gave a violent jolt. Sarah Jenkins, the woman who had been by her side for years. Quiet, unassuming, but with hands that worked magic. The one she trusted most, her closest confidant. It was her. The hunt had begun hours ago. "I'm sorry, Sophia," I said, taking her hand as it grew cold in mine. "I didn't make up that story to get back at you for some imaginary affair. I did it to help you, to draw all your attention away from what was happening to your own body, to make you blame the slight palpitations, the subtle numbness on your emotional state. And you see, my plan worked perfectly. You didn't realize the truth until the very last moment. But that's enough." Sophia's vision blurred. The magnificent crystal chandelier on the ceiling fractured into a million shimmering points of light. Then, the light in her eyes went out completely. I waited, watching her, until the last whisper of warmth left her body. "All right, my turn." The calm expression on my face vanished, replaced instantly by panic. "Sophia?" My voice trembled with just the right amount of fear. "Sophia, what's wrong? Wake up." I shook her limp body. I checked for breath. I felt for a pulse at her neck. Nothing. I stumbled back, feigning shock and horror. Then, I fumbled for my phone and dialed 911, my voice cracking with manufactured panic. My wife. She just collapsed. The address is..." The sirens of the ambulance and the police cars arrived almost simultaneously, their flashing red and blue lights shattering the peace of the Vancroft estate on our wedding night. A young officer led me to a separate room, draping a blanket over my shoulders. My hair and shirt were still damp with wine, the perfect evidence of my grief and confusion. "Mr. Miller, please accept our condolences," said the detective in charge, a middle-aged man named Detective Russo. "Can you tell us what happened right before Mrs. Vancroft collapsed?" I looked up, my eyes red-rimmed, my voice hoarse. We had a fight." "What about?" I looked down, running my hands through my hair in a gesture of pure anguish. "A stupid joke. I told her. I made up a horrible story to scare her, because she said she'd slept with my best man." I trailed off, letting my expression of shame and regret fill in the blanks. She got so angry. She threw her wine at me. And then she suddenly clutched her chest, said she couldn't breathe, and just fell. I thought she was just having a panic attack from the fight. My story was plausible. It perfectly explained everything at the scene. The spilled wine, the broken glass, my disheveled appearance, and Sophia's sudden, tragic accident. Detective Russo took notes. "Did Mrs. Vancroft have any history of heart conditions?" I shook my head. "No, she was always perfectly healthy." The news of Sophia's death exploded the next day. "Heiress dies suddenly on wedding night." The headline was pure catnip for the media. As the new husband and first witness, I was naturally the prime suspect. The Vancroft family used all their influence to pressure the police, demanding a thorough investigation. I was brought in for questioning over and over. I was completely cooperative, answering every question. My alibi was airtight. From the wedding ceremony that afternoon to the reception and our return to the suite, hundreds of people could vouch for my whereabouts. The poison required hours to take effect, and during that time, I was standing on a stage, reading my vows to a room full of guests. I had no opportunity. The investigation quickly hit a dead end. They couldn't find the source of a poison, nor could they establish a motive. To them, I was a classic rags-to-riches story. Marrying Sophia Vancroft was the pinnacle of my life. Why would I destroy it? "Mr. Miller," Detective Russo said, visiting me a few days later. "We need to ask you about the Serenity Spa. We've learned it was one of Mrs. Vancroft's properties, and she spent a lot of time there." I sighed, putting on a troubled expression. "Honestly, Detective, I didn't know much about her businesses. I just knew she poured a lot of herself into that place. She worked late, had clients. Some of them seemed very important. She never liked me asking questions. I left it there. A husband's simple concern for his wife's stressful career, a subtle, unintentional breadcrumb trail leading them right where I wanted them to go." The police acted quickly. Citing the ongoing investigation, they raided the Serenity Spa. And in doing so, they pried open Pandora's box. In Sophia's private office, they found a hidden hard drive. On it were countless video files. The contents were enough to cause a seismic shock through the city's elite. The videos starred a who's who of powerful figures, politicians, judges, CEOs. All of them were recorded at the spa, indulging in the special services Sophia provided. She had built a massive blackmail empire, using these tapes to manipulate one powerful person after another, all to benefit the Vancroft Corporation. The scandal was immense. The media went into a frenzy. One by one, protected by anonymity, Sophia's victims came forward to corroborate the story. Her image flipped overnight from glamorous socialite to venomous criminal. Everyone was now convinced her death was an act of revenge by a victim she had pushed too far. She had too many enemies. So many, in fact, that the suspicion surrounding me, her new husband, evaporated into insignificance. The Vancroft family, crippled by the scandal and facing financial ruin, no longer had the power to come after me. No one cared if I was the killer anymore. I had transformed from a suspect into a victim, a pitiful man deceived by a monstrous wife, who might have been next on her list. I watched the news reports scroll across the screen, then calmly turned off the television. Silence. The Vancroft empire was crumbling. The names that once graced the society pages were now headlines in a sordid scandal. Everything had gone according to plan. I stood at the floor-to-ceiling window, looking down at the glittering lights of the city. This was Sophia's favorite view. She always said you could see the whole world from up here. Now it was just me. Did I win? No. But I didn't lose either. I had simply ended a war that had been raging for 10 years. The police would never find the real truth. They would believe some powerful man, cornered by Sophia's blackmail, had her eliminated. They would never suspect the real killer was a masseuse named Sarah Jenkins. The woman Sophia trusted with her body and her secrets. My best man was innocent. Sophia's taunt about sleeping with him was just a lie to wound me, and for my plan, a perfect smokescreen. The real poison was delivered by Sarah. She had mixed a custom synthesized toxin into the aromatherapy oils. Over the course of a multi-hour massage, it was absorbed slowly, painlessly, through the skin. It was a slow-acting poison with no color and no scent. The initial symptoms were almost identical to a severe anxiety attack. Heart palpitations, numbness, shortness of breath. My long, terrifying story was the anesthetic for the murder. It ensured she would misattribute every symptom, every strange feeling, to fear and rage. Sarah Jenkins, my co-conspirator, we were bound by fate because we carried the same scars and the same sin. That sin was committed 10 years ago. The story I told Sophia was half true. My mother was an addict. She did sell me. At that very spa, the Serenity Spa. But the second half of the story was a lie. My cowardly father never came back for me. He had run off with the last of our money long before, as soon as he realized my mother was a lost cause. I never saw him again. That night, I was the only one who ran home from the spa. I was the one she cornered, the one she beat and screamed at. I remember it vividly. She kicked the door in and dragged me from the corner. Her eyes were red, her face twisted by addiction and fury. Where's the money? The money they gave you? Did you hide it? You little bastard, you dare hold out on me. She pinned me to the floor, her hands closing around my throat. My vision started to go dark. I thought I was going to die. But then, someone else burst in. It was Sarah. She lived in our rundown tenement building, 2 floors down. The quietest girl you'd ever meet. And the other victim on the massage table next to mine that day at the spa. She grabbed an old kettle from the stove and brought it down on my mother's head with all her might. Bang! Hot water and curses exploded through the room. My mother screamed and let go. I gasped for air, coughing violently. She turned and saw Sarah. You little bitch, you dare. She lunged at her. I don't know where the strength came from, but I scrambled up and grabbed the heavy brass bull statuette from our entryway. I ran up behind her and slammed it into the back of her skull. Thud! She turned, her eyes blank and collapsed. We killed her. The 2 of us. 2 kids, not even adults. There was no Mr. Henderson, no one-eyed watchmaker to clean up our mess. There was only us and a universe of fear. We dragged her body down to the building's grimy basement, to the furnace, the hulking cast-iron beast that heated the entire building, roaring day and night. We looked at the furnace, then at each other. Sarah's face was still red from a splash of hot water, but her eyes were unnervingly calm. Make her disappear, she said. It's the only way we survive. We used the furnace that consumed coal and trash to consume our shared nightmare. We dismembered her. We fed our mother into the flames, piece by piece, over the course of one long, terrible night. The fire burned away everything. No one ever noticed the slightly different smell of the smoke. Our lives, too, had been plunged into a darker, hotter fire. From that day forward, we were one person in 2 bodies. I studied relentlessly, clawed my way into a top university, and slowly climbed into the world of our enemies, looking for the people responsible. She went to school for massage therapy, becoming the best in her field through sheer talent and will, until she could embed herself at Sophia's side, waiting. We rarely spoke. but we always knew what the other was doing. And why? Now it was over. Sophia was dead. The Vancroft empire was in ruins. The people who hurt us would all fall one by one. The night outside the window was beautiful, but I felt a deep chill. I took out my phone and dialed a number I hadn't called in a very long time. It connected almost immediately. The line was silent. She didn't speak. I was silent too. We didn't need words. Finally, after a long moment, I spoke, my voice barely a whisper. "Sarah, it's over." A faint breath on the other end of the line. Then, she replied with just 4 words of her own. "Liam, the sun's coming up." Yes, the sun was coming up. But we would be forever trapped in that long, dark night. The night, 10 years ago, when we killed my mother and our childhood together.